Hey, fellas, welcome. Welcome to our first Run It Back podcast where we kind of chop it up about all aspects related to hoops,
Mhm.
some business of sports, as well as leadership. So it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to spend some time with you two fellas here, both Reggie Guyton as well as Chris Rivers. We'll get into a little bit second on their background. But what we're here to talk about today, which I think is really a timely topic, is wisdom to parents of young athletes, specifically around hoopers. When you think about all the athletes balling right now today as we speak, pursuing opportunities to play in high school and college, it's an exciting journey for a lot of families and also for kids, but also can be some disappointments. It can be stressful. There can be some anxiety behind it. And really talking about the role that parents can play in navigating young athletes through that hoop journey, right? And I think both of you have seen it based off your backgrounds, sometimes where that's successfully been navigated, and sometimes the parents' involvement has been detrimental to that athlete. So this particular Run It Back episode will help, I think, many parents successfully navigate that journey, regardless of your athletic background. As a parent, we'll share some ideas, some actions, some wisdoms, some things you could use even today in successfully supporting your son or daughter through their own hoop journey. So welcome, fellas. Welcome.
And glad to be here.
Good. Excited to have you. I'd like to
Likewise.
start off just introducing both of these gentlemen here. And first of all, we got Reggie Guyton from Portland, Oregon. Attended Jefferson High School in Portland, the School of Champions. Went to Willamette University, where he was a point guard there for several years. Was also a graduate assistant at Willamette. Did some assistant coaching in high school in terms of Grant High School, my alma mater that I went to, as well as he was the founder and president of Portland Panthers AAU team, where they won 6 state championships, and an incredible accomplishment. My son was fortunate enough to play in your program, Reggie, and then has helped countless number of kids, both boys and girls, receive scholarships. So welcome, Reggie. It's great to have you. And then Chris Rivers from Oakland, California, attended Bishop O'Dowd High School, graduate of UC Davis, director, executive, 18 years of sports marketing experience at Adidas as well as Reebok. Has really kind of helped jump off the start of a number of NBA careers and also numerous All-Stars and even Hall of Famers in that sport. So he's really helped support a number of individuals at the highest levels, 6 years of experience in sports management, and he's currently really instrumental in building brand portfolios for NIL athletes. So welcome, Chris, to the program today. It's great to have you join us. All right.
I'm excited to be on the first episode of Run It Back.
All right. Good, man. Hey, so let's kind of jump into it. And I'd like to kind of start at the beginning, and maybe Chris, you can kind of walk us through this. What is it when you see a kid? How do you know if your kid is really talented and exceptional, unique from a basketball standpoint as a parent? When can you start to recognize that? What's normally the age you need to start paying attention that my kid's a little bit different in terms of his athletic talent and from a hoop standpoint? Why don't you kind of share with us your thoughts around that?
It's a great question, Tony. As far as parents knowing when their kid is special or a little more talented than the rest of them, I don't think there's any set particular age. For some, it as a first grader. If he's the kid that comes home from school and all he wants to do is go outside and dribble and shoot, you know that he has an interest in it. For some other, it might not be till 7th or 8th grade when they hit that first major growth spurt. So I think for each individual family, it's definitely a different timing, but I think that it's important that parents who really want to be successful at navigating this process for their kids and being in tune to their emotional growth, to make sure that you listen to the right people and you follow the signs, and to remember that just because your kid doesn't make the A team in 4th grade does not mean he won't be a 3-time varsity all-conference player in high school. I think that as parents, we want to see our kids be successful, and I was guilty of it myself, that we all want to make sure everything happens now. But some kids just develop later. Their interest develops later. Their bodies get stronger later, or maybe they get better coaching later. Maybe they move into a different environment later. So I caution parents about trying to label their kids basketball phenoms too early, because most of those fizzle out. But more importantly, try to encourage their love for the game, their commitment to being disciplined and just getting better and playing for the right reasons.
Yeah, those are excellent points. Really kind of, Chris, focusing on the development, right? And staying involved in the process of developing is kind of where I see you kind of talking to the parents and the kids in terms of focus. Reggie, what about you? Do you have any thoughts around that?
I would add to that. I think that was well articulated, but I think when special, special, but that's because we know basketball. I think the challenging question would be for that parent that doesn't know basketball. How do you know that your kid is special or just a kid that loves the game of basketball, right? And so I think in that situation, the best thing to do is, as part of our nurturing as parents, we need to just recognize, put our kids in an environment where, number one, they can have fun. And then while they're having fun, see if your kid stands out above everybody else, right? And at the same time, it works both ways. Maybe it's his calling, maybe it's not his calling. But in either case, your role as a parent is just to put him in that situation where he can make his own evaluation. So I think it's easy for us to recognize a kid that can go left and right.
Yep.
And speed, quickness, coordinated, a 6'4" kid in the 5th grade or something like that. You recognize that there's potential. But again, we know basketball. So that's a challenging question for those folks that don't.
Are there any, when you think about that, Reggie, one of the things you brought up in terms of kind of recognizing, where your kid's at is from a parent standpoint, are there things that you should be looking for in terms of do they like it or do they love it? And how much of a factor does that play in terms of, what next steps you should be taking with your kids? There's some signs that you should be looking for, as your kid is young, to see whether or not is this something that they just like doing or do they love doing it? Kind of speak on that a little bit.
Man, I love basketball, man. Growing up, I mean, I knew I loved it, man. It's to this day, it's my first love. But, sleeping with your ball, dribbling in the rain with your ball, all of that, right? So, I think, as a parent and as a grandparent, I can see what my kids and did as in their youthful days, as well as in their youthful days, to realize what they really enjoy doing, right? And it's really just something that they live, eat, and sleep. Whether or not it's gymnastics or baseball or basketball or golfing or whatever it is, you tend to recognize that, right? Or reading. They may like reading. You have some kids that are gifted, mathematically. I have a grandson that's on that level, and then I have another granddaughter that, she's very creative. And so I think that once you recognize their opportunities there, you just, again, put them in a situation where they can be successful and, and help them enjoy the journey.
So you got that. Thanks for sharing that, Reggie. So you got that kid, right, who's talented, looks like they love it. They're, 11 or 12 years old, right? Kind of, Chris, could you kind of speak to what are some things you can do, right, as a parent to begin to start setting your kid up for success? What are some practical steps that you can begin to start thinking about taking, either in your own experience or the hundreds of parents and athletes that you work with over the years through that whole journey?
Things that parents can do to help their kids on this journey when they start to identify that their kid may be a little different than the rest of the group is, number one, stay calm. I don't think I would have said that as a parent. I don't think I did that necessarily, but 25 years into this, working with hundreds and hundreds of families, I think that families need to recognize that we need to stay level set. Number two, getting a circle of 1 or 2 people that you truly trust if it depends upon what your basketball IQ is. Very similar to what Reggie alluded to earlier. If you're a dad or a mom who played competitive basketball, you've been in the gym, you sweat, you know what you're looking at, you get it. But if you're a family who may have had other interests and this is your kid falling into a love for an activity that you don't know about, getting the right information is critical. And it's a lot harder than it sounds. Obviously, working in the business for multiple years, I've seen kids at 11 and 12 where people were projected to be NBA players before they even reached puberty or seventh grade. There's a lot of trials and tribulation that come when players and families are on that journey. But I think it's critical that families make sure they have good information that they can process from individuals who have no agenda on the development of their kid.
Yeah.
Not someone who's trying to coach them, not someone who's trying to train them, not someone who wants to be like me, be their future NIL manager, just someone who understands the game and goes, here's what I've seen, here's some things for you to consider. And lastly, Tony, parents need to be able to listen. And it's so hard to do because I didn't do it very well. I did it pretty good, but not as well as I would like. Take the emotions out of it and realize you cannot play for your kid. They have to be passionate about it. They can like it and still be really successful at it going down the line. Love is something that's strong. I wouldn't expect too many kids at age 10 or 11 to love anything besides video games being on their phone. So just recognizing that just because your kid doesn't love it does not mean that he won't walk across the stage and shake the commissioner's hand one day. It doesn't mean that he won't get a full ride scholarship and save you a whole bunch of money in academics, but letting them be on their journey.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Well said. One of the things that I'll press you on a little bit, Chris, is that staying calm piece as a parent, right? You know, when you've got a kid who you see has got exceptional talent. I mean, and then the other piece is finding a group that you can trust, right, around your kid. Just kind of speak to that piece around trust, right? What are some things you should be looking for as a parent who's got a kid who's talented, and you've got these coaches, you've got all these types of different, AAU coaches around you. How do you figure out who to trust, right? Because if the reality is those individuals wouldn't be involved with your kid unless that kid had a level of talent, right?
True.
So that's a reality there. So how do you figure out who can I trust here?
Ooh. Figuring out who you can trust in this business, like life, is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
I know many people over my years of being involved with this who we thought we could trust, and we found out later that you couldn't trust. So recommendation number one for parents is you must ask questions, whether it's directly to that coach, directly to that program director. You must ask questions to other parents whose kids have been through that program. You must ask questions to people who know that coach or that program director. I understand that everyone's work schedules do not allow them to be as involved as other parents. So if you're a parent whose schedule just doesn't allow it, you need to anoint someone else that you trust to be that voice to make sure that you're background checking that person. Obviously, it's easier if it's a high school coach and they've been in the same school for 10, 15 years. You kind of know his history. Everyone sees him. But AAU/club basketball, rec ball, whatever you want to do it, if it's someone who's going to spend intimate time with your child, you need to do your history and you need to see if their values align with your family values. They might be great for basketball, but they might be awful in the value area. They might be someone who, is a loud coach and intense, and you might want your son to have that or daughter to have that. It might be someone who's quietly and soft-spoken, but very effective. You may not want that, but it's critical that you ask questions and get to know the person who you're entrusting your kid with. Because if this person is coaching your kid, they're spending 2 or 3 days together, they're spending 2 or 3 weekends together, they are going to have a direct impact on their lives and their development going forward. And unfortunately, we all have stories of where it went left, extremely left. And people are human. People make mistakes. I've made one, at least 2. So, but I think it's critical that just because someone works for a rec department XYZ or is part of AAU program ABC does not mean that you just trust that they are who they are as people. They are who they are. Spiritually, you just need to do your homework to make sure that you know who you're entrusting to pour into the development of your kid, especially at a time where they probably can't protect themselves as the way that they'll be able to do at 16 or 17.
Yeah, I think that's true. Go ahead, Reggie.
And let's be honest. I mean, it's easier said than done, as because I mean, a variety of socioeconomic situations. I mean, the majority, at least the inner city kids, they come from a single parent household, and typically that's a mom, right? And the mom um, is in some cases is looking for a father figure to help them with their son as it
Mhm.
relates to any guidance or direction. Most importantly, just to put them in a safe environment. And as parents and as coaches, we got to recognize that we have to accept our own accountability. That this parent has entrusted me with their kid. In other words, we have to place a value on that kid and appreciate the opportunity and realize that it's an opportunity to shape this young man to become a lot more than a basketball player, right?
Right.
And so we got to embrace that trust and handle it accordingly. But it's difficult. I mean, when I was coming up, when I first moved from to Portland from LA, there was a gentleman that came in my world. He was my PE teacher, right? My mother never met him at all, but he used to come pick me up at the house and take me on trips, balling and all that. My mom never paid a dime, never asked any questions. She
Right.
appreciated the man, but it was a different environment where now, because of NIL and all these other things, there's a lot of predators out there. And I just think that parents have to be a lot more conscious today than they were back then when I was coming up.
Yeah, well said. Let's talk about that transition then, right? Because, I didn't think about it then when I was playing or even really when my son was playing, but that decision on what high school you're going to go to, right? If you've got a talented kid is an important decision to make. Based off your experiences, and maybe Chris, you can start off. What role should a parent play in that process, right? In terms of choosing what high school this kid should attend, and just kind of give us your view and your experiences on that.
The role a parent should play in the process of selecting a high school should be
Mm-hmm.
alpha and omega. I mean, they should be 100% locked in
Uh huh.
because it's their kid. They obviously, we're talking about sports, so these are decisions highly influenced by potential sports outcomes. You definitely need to get some insights and some advice from probably some outside folks. But I've seen some parents just kind of let an AAU coach or club coach say, hey, your kid needs to go here because he'll get this, because he'll get that. I think that parents need to stop and assess, what do we want our kid to get from the sports experience? Does he just need to be in a winning culture? Does he need to play for a coach that's more disciplined? Does he need to be in an environment that's just safe? Or does he need to be in a program where he can take all the shots?
Mm-hmm.
I think that those are factors that you need to understand. What are you trying to get through that experience?
Mm-hmm.
And it's different for every family. Everyone thinks they want their kid to play Division I and be an NBA player, which all sounds good, but what you do in your high school experience can significantly um, accelerate or slow down that process. But parents need to know, no different than you'd want to know if your kid's going to see a doctor, what the doctor's about. No different than if your kid's joining the Boy Scouts, you want to know who the troop leaders are. I mean, parents need to be actively involved in every aspect. But when it comes to sports, if that's not your forte, your background, you need to have trusted confidants that you know are going to give you good information that's best for you and your child, and not because they have the opportunity to benefit in any faction, in any factor. Not.
Yeah, well said, Reggie. You have anything else to add? You have anything to add to that?
Not really, man. I think each situation varies, man. As my kid, and the way I handled the situation is he was in a competitive all-star team since day one that I started coaching him, right? So my youngest boy, that is, in fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. So when he went to high school, because I was teaching him how to be a point guard and distribute the ball and all that other stuff, I felt it was important for him to go to a situation where he was getting a lot of buckets, right?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, to learn how to be selfish because he was so unselfish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then but again, ultimately, I let him make that decision, right? I think, again, today's environment is a lot different than years ago with the prep school situation. So if you have a special kid, I mean, there are, as Chris can allude to and articulate and address this matter a lot better than I could, they have a lot more options than just a local kid that can go to a district high school, and it's a critical decision, So
Yeah, yeah, and that whole dynamic, right, between and I think this will hit home with the number you write, both of you, is that whole dynamic between player, parent, and coach can be an important dynamic. What advice do you have for parents that their kid is now they're in high school or beginning high school? What should that relationship like with a coach look like in the best interest of the kid, right? And their hoop journey, because I've seen some situations where that relationship between a parent and coach can be a lot of conflict there. I've seen it where it's been very healthy. Kind of give us your view on that piece.
As I see it, the relationship between a coach and a parent and a player
Mm-hmm.
should be humane. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, too many parents that I'm seeing thinking that, let me back up. First off, everyone doesn't get to pick their coach. If you live in zip code XYZ, you're going to high school XYZ, that coach has been there for 25 years, that's who you're getting.
Right.
And oftentimes those coaches who have been there a long time are less open to changing, and you get a new kid coming in and he likes to play more like James Harden and less like Terrell Brandon, and that coach has coached both those type of players, it's gonna be a problem. But I think that parents need to have an open line of communication with the coach and try to be cognizant and try to remember that that coach is responsible for all 12 to 15 players, and he's responsible for the outcome of the total team, not just how many points that your kid scores. And I don't think the conflict is going to stop, Tony. I think it's going to continue to be an issue because high school is such a short time. You get 28 games. You only get to do it 4 times. And especially with the emphasis that's placed on club/slash AAU basketball today, when kids are playing 50 or 60 games in a 6-month period, parents kind of be accustomed to a certain way. But I think it's important for parents to have open dialogue with the coach and find out his expectations and their expectations. But you also got to be willing to accept this is where this coach sees your son. And oftentimes it's not going to be right. My son played on the bench junior year, JV, and
Yeah.
varsity swung. Of course, I thought he should have been getting a few varsity minutes. He probably could have, but I had to really bite my tongue and trust that the coach had the best interest for the program, which I know he did because they win every year.
Mm-hmm.
And the next year later, my son was able to start 30 games. They won a state championship, blah, blah, blah. But me in this basketball mode going, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in the stands and I'm watching other kids who were quality going, he's not that much better than my kid. How do I get in?
Right.
But I had to take the high road and the respectful road because he's a member of our community and I respect and love him. And just bottom line, just not be an asshole.
Uh-huh.
You don't run up on the coach 3 minutes after the game and go, how come Johnny didn't get in?
Right.
You set up a time, you email him, you have a conversation, you find out what's Johnny not doing or what are the things that Johnny needs to do so that Johnny can earn more minutes in your program. And hopefully the coach will shoot you straight. But that's where that homework and doing that research before you choose a program. Are you going to a high school where the coach only plays 8 guys?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
7? My son's high school coach was comfortable playing 5 or 6. I mean,
Right.
7 was like against his religion a couple of years, but the results were always right. So just being able to have that insight that you put your kid in a position, assuming he's skilled, assuming he works hard, assuming he's respectful, assuming he's checking all those boxes he needs to talk to. But you definitely got to respect that these are humans. There's ways to communicate. If you don't feel that the coach is giving you the respect you need, you might need to bring in the athletic director, you might need to bring in the principal, but it can be handled in a professional manner. Never attacking them, never threatening them. I don't recommend going on social media, putting tweets out because I've seen it. I don't recommend being at the top of the gym stands, yelling at the coach. I've seen that from some players who are now in the NBA and their parents. So there's definitely ways to realize that the coach's job is hard and they have responsibility to you as well, being the coach, but it definitely needs to be heavy dialogue. But parents aren't realistic. I'm a parent. I wasn't as realistic as and I thought I was. I thought I was extremely realistic.
Right.
I still think I am, but I'm sure a part of me wasn't because 50% of me is out there playing. So
Right.
I think that, my kid can always do it. I've seen Reggie's son play. I saw, little Reg from third or fourth grade come up all the way through college. So I know some of the some of the challenges that Reg went through as a dad who was a successful player, a successful coach, having a son who's pretty good, playing with players who are a little bit more ranked, but just trying to get in where he fits in. So
Yeah.
it's never going to be easy, Tony, but we have to be better, and we got to use kind words. We need to be empathetic. We need to speak with professionalism. And I think that parents need to be held more accountable for some of the buffoonery in all sports that parents are now starting to bring to youth sports.
Who reels in? Oh, go ahead, Reggie. You had something you want to
I
comment
was
on?
just going to add something, just a little different spin on it, or a different layer, I should say, just add a different layer. Man, that dynamic can get, you talk about buffoonery, it can get real crazy when a kid is getting recruited, right? So you have that relationship challenge already as a dad, as a parent, the coach, a club team, and a high school team. But when a kid starts getting recruited, let's just say, I had a big, right? I had a 6'8" kid that was being highly recruited to be a shooting guard, if not a small forward. But on his high school team, he played at the center position, right? And so the recruitment of that kid just got to be a little crazy because the high school coach wanted to keep him on the block, which, I didn't interfere with that. The dad didn't interfere with that. But the dad wanted him to play the position that he was being recruited at to show that the kid can shoot the ball, right? Because on the summer circuit, he shot lights out, right?
Right.
And but it just got crazy. So my point is, it's not always, that responsibility doesn't always fall on the parent to have a good, effective working relationship with the coach. It also, with the high school coach, it also works the other way around, where the high school coach has to work to have a good coaching relationship with the parent as well.
Yeah, those are good points, Reggie, and Chris was also hitting on it too. So, who managed expectations then, right? I mean, what happens when expectations exceed the talent, you know, of the kid? Who's responsible for reeling that in? You've got, parents that are all in. You got, the kid who's all in. But you've got these expectations sometimes as a parent of what you want your kid to be or what they can become. But in some situations, those expectations don't align with the talent. So how do you manage that? That situation, because that can lead, normally it's expectations that can lead to a lot of conflict, right? Whether it's between parent and their son or daughter, or the coach.
That's a good question. Because nobody wants to be a dream killer, right? I mean, if anything,
Right.
we want to encourage, I got my coach's hat on now. You want to encourage the kid to reach their full potential, right? You want to encourage your kid as a parent to reach their full potential, right? But at the same time, at some point, you recognize that, hey, his bar is a little bit lower than where he wants to be. And the best way to address it is to address it, right? You can't couch it. You have to address it. Now, how you handle that, you don't come out with words of saying, son or daughter, you're not good, or that's not going to happen, da 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 da. Like Chris said, this is a huge journey, and nothing is to say that at this point, that at a future date you're going to walk across the stage and shake the commissioner's hand because you're in the league, right?
Right.
But here's where we are now. How do we make the best out of this situation? And then you just help a kid make that decision in terms of what's going to be the best environment. Again, it gets back down to trust, right? If you're doing the best thing for the kid, you're going to put them in the best environment where they can be successful. And you're going to help them get to that environment without hurting their feelings. But at the same time, you're not going to be selling any false dreams, right? You got to be real, and you got to keep it real.
Mm-hmm. No, well said, Reggie. Chris, you have any adds to that?
No, I don't think it's possible for expectation to be fully managed in a healthy environment. We are emotional humans. Basketball is even a more emotional game.
Right.
And because of all the outside factors that can contribute when your kid is pretty good, we all get caught up.
Uh-huh.
And we all want to. I mean, if your kid averages 13 points, we think he should have averaged 16 because somebody else didn't pass him the ball a couple times. So, um, but I think the kids of whose families who do it the best are the ones who are the most successful, as Reggie said, at reaching their potential.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my job to tell your kid he can't be in the NBA. It's my job, if you want me to be honest, to give you things that players who play in the NBA or who played in the NBA, here's things that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a checklist of all the things that players who made the NBA if you're 6'1". If you can do all these things, then you got a chance. If you can't do most of these things, your chances are probably minimal. So I try to just meet those questions with fact. And hopefully parents will go, oh, either I'm gonna help my kid get him more training, get him better nutrition, get him, or realize, you know what, his journey's probably not going to go past JV sophomore year of basketball, and we're going to embrace that and make the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, always easier said than done.
I agree with that. I agree with
Tony,
that.
I got one thing to add to that though, is that I've seen situations where kids were disappointed with respect to their levels of recruitment, and they went a different route and just tore it up, just absolutely got put on the map and ended up going to the league, right? I was with Chris and we went up to up in Washington and recruited, looked at a kid, actually two kids that ended up in that same situation, right? They weren't the best kids on their club team, but they ended up making the best out of the situation. Next thing you know, they go to the league. At the same time, kids that became young adults that came through my program that were over recruited, right? They went to a school that was a little bit above them, and once they came down to a level where they should have been recruited at,
Mm-hmm.
man, they basically extended their high school career. So if they were averaging, 20 to 25 a game in high school, they were averaging 20, 25 to 30 a game in college and absolutely loved their college experience.
Yeah.
Again, it's about, going to a level where you feel that you're going to be successful and enjoy that and, make the best out of your situation. If it's meant to be, they'll find you. I mean,
Yeah.
they'll find you.
Yeah. Good discussion on that topic, because one of the things that wasn't as prevalent where we were all growing up was this AAU circuit, right? And this opportunity to kind of travel and play with different teams. We talked about the high school and that process and how do you know which high school to select and programs, but also kids got other choices, especially based off their talent level. There's a lot of AAU teams, travel teams that want these kids who are talented, who have opportunities. What are the characteristics? How do you figure that out as a parent in terms of what program to put your kid in? They've got the high school piece figured out. Now you got the AAU travel piece to figure out, and that can be just as important in some cases than the high school decision, right? So kind of open up and kind of give us your thoughts on that. And I'll start with you, Chris, on that one.
For parents who need to decide what AAU, or let's just call it non-high school, non-scholastic program to put your kid in, it can be very difficult. First off, you got to see if you have any options depending upon where you live.
Right.
Um, that's number one. Number two, are those options that you have, are those people that you can see trusting and pouring into the development of your child? Mm-hmm. Just because they have good basketball program, they send people to college, they still may not be some people that you want around your son. Thirdly, my recommendation is you need to put your kid into a position where they're going to develop. And I mean develop by getting minutes on the court. That may not be the Sexes program, that might not be on the shoe sponsor circuit. It may be with an independent team that plays in a lesser exposed environment, but your kid is getting the reps that he needs. Mm-hmm. I think all that matters. I think what grade the kid is it a kid going 8th to 9th grade, 14U, or is it a kid on his last summer trying to get opportunities where he may get some college look, 16 or 17? There's many kids playing on shoe circuit teams, the 9th, 10th, and 11th man, who have some cool backpacks, cool warm-ups, walking to the gym looking good, but never get off the bench.
Right.
And development is the key for kids to get better. And whether they're high major, mid major, low major, D2, D3, NIA, whatever the final outcome is, finding a place that you can trust that your son's going to be safe. And I say that seriously, safe, and then a chance for them to develop. And that may not be the place that's most revered by those on the outside. Everyone won't be able to see that decision, but those are high-level decisions that parents who make them right. There's a kid right now I know his dad. I don't know the kid's name is Carlton Carrington. He's a freshman at University of Pittsburgh right now. He started off the season last week, first game ever. It's one of 2 ACC freshmen to ever have a triple-double to start. He's point guard. He was a top 125, top 130 kid, played on the EYBL, super talented. Had a chance to go to schools that were a little more, had let's just say larger brand names than Pittsburgh, but the dad who's been in this game a lot knew that the most important thing was to send him to a coach that he trusted.
Right.
That was going to develop him into a man, give him the opportunity to play, and this kid could run around and shoot all the balls or pass all the balls or do whatever he needs to do to develop as the player. And he's only 3 or 4 games into the season, but he's out there crushing it. And he wasn't mentioned mock drafts 4 or 5 months ago. His name's popping up on mock drafts now, solely because he had this skill package and hadn't been fully viewed in the light it is now. But he's getting an opportunity to play 28 minutes a game and come off dribble handoffs and pick and rolls and make all those reads. And he's shooting like 53% from the field and doing those things. But if that dad would have been solely focused on the name on the front, oh, my kid went to one of the blue blood schools, or my kid's playing at so-and-so, he would still be a good player because he's talented, but he definitely wouldn't be having the same opportunity that he's having now. So sometimes lesser now is greater later. But parents need to really be able to have those discussions with people when they make those choices. I know that's difficult.
Yeah, lesser now is greater later. That's a great tagline. Because I've seen that situation where you choose the top program or the top travel team because of the exposure that team has, and they're traveling, they're playing in national tournaments. But in some cases, that's not the best thing for your kid, especially if they're not getting an opportunity to play and participate. And I got a good friend of mine who's an agent, and I asked him that question. I said, hey, do you leave your kid, they're playing at a pretty good program, and you're choosing to take them to a higher profile program. What do you do? What's the decision-making process? And then he said, hey, is the kid going to play? Because I got to be able to see the kid on the court and see how he develops. And that is one of the most important things. It's not always, like you said, Chris, the name on the front of the jersey, but the development opportunity for the kid long-term. So well said. Guyton, you have any comments on that one?
No, man, development and reps. I mean, that's the bottom line, development and reps.
Yes. So both of you, when I added up, I mean, you guys both got probably close to 40 years of experience in this space, and not just working in this space, but also I know both of you personally. You're trusted advisors in case to parents, to coaches, to kids over the years. Based off what you've seen, right? What does a healthy relationship look like between parents and their young, talented athlete? I mean, when you just kind of look back at all your experiences, what are the 3 or 4 things that you've normally seen that, this is what normally works, or this is a healthy relationship here? Now, see, Chris, I see you kind of smiling there, so maybe we'll start with you.
I was going to say, man, just the fact that you have a relationship. Because trust me, man, there's a lot of folks, a lot of players that don't have a relationship with their parents, particularly with their dads, right? Uh-huh. And you can see it, right? And I mean, they don't want to ride to the game with their dad. They don't want to ride home with their dad. They'll do anything they could to be away from it, right? And so just the fact that they have a relationship with the dad is a positive situation. So.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to podcast, whatever, but it was Kobe Bryant talking. And he said something that I'm starting to share with parents. He said he went through one whole summer playing basketball. I assume he was 9 or 10 because he was playing basketball. And he said that he didn't score a point the entire summer, which us knowing the Kobe player, we know how's that even possible? So the host asked him, how's that possible? And he goes, I sucked and I wasn't very good. But what happened after that season is his dad told him, son, I'm going to love you if you score 63 points a game or if you score 0 points a game. And Kobe said at that moment when he realized that he had the support and the validation of his dad, no matter what he did, he said, well, hell, I might as well go try to score 63. And that's what he did. So, and a lot of parents, I know I felt in that area on occasion, I'm sure, just don't support their kids unconditionally. We love them more when they play well. As Reggie alluded to, they didn't play well, they're going to hear about it in the car. So the healthy relationship is parents need to realize that their kids are not brands, that they're their children, that they're still developing, and that basketball is what they do, it's who they are. And that if they don't feel that they're getting the support from their parents, and then most of it is emotional development. I'm not saying you can't be tough. I mean, you know who your kid is. I'm difficult. I'm tough on my kids, but I'm also tough on my kids to where they were. I met them where they were. But if you're not a place, if you're not a person, your son or daughter feels they can come talk to you about these items, they're going to find somebody else. And you're not going to know what's going on in those conversations. And you're not going to know if they're getting the information that you want. So as much as we want to scream for our kids and celebrate and tweet when they get a dunk and repost those highlights, we also need to make sure that we love them and we embrace them even more, because failure is part of the process. They're going to fail. They're going to have 4 for 18 games if they're pretty good. First thing I would say is, woo, at least you got 18 shots. That's a good start. Let's see, can we take 4 for 18 and turn that into 7 for 18? Maybe a couple of those shots you shouldn't have taken. So maybe you should have been maybe 4 for 13. And we can, but once again, I understand basketball. I've been around basketball. I'm still around basketball. Every parent doesn't have that ability to discuss that way. That's when you need someone in your circle that you trust that can have those conversations with your kid. It's no different than when my daughter wanted to play piano, hired a piano teacher. That's not what I did. That's not what I knew. Although I played in a previous life, I needed to bring in someone who was expert in that space, who could meet my daughter where she was, to give her the tools that she needed to try to see how far along she could carry that journey. So, like Reggie said, healthy relationship with parents, the ones that don't take the game too seriously, the ones that aren't screaming at the kid during the game, the ones that aren't screaming at the coach, the ones that aren't screaming at the ref, those are not healthy relationships. I don't ever anticipate that behavior changing, but it's not healthy. Your kid has to be able to succeed or fail. And as my brother Rossi Karen from Houston says, the confidence we instill in our kids matters.
Yeah.
And some of us as parents just take away confidence and we don't realize it. And kids aren't out there playing because they love it or like it. They're playing because they feel they have to, or that's the only relationship they have with their dad or mom, is when they're out there playing. So they're playing, they're seeking validation. They aren't playing because they enjoy it.
Right. Well, that's well said. And that story with Kobe was very timely. I think I've heard that one before. And the thing that I think about is freedom, right? You know, when your parent is, you know, loves you unconditionally and their esteem is not tied to your success on the basketball court, right? They're letting you run your own race, your own journey. They're there to support you. I think those are some of the best relationships, because you know you can try things as a kid. You can go ahead and take some shots. You may have some successes, you may have some failures, but you still got that support at home, and someone else's esteem is not wrapped into your success or what's happening, you know, on the hoop court. I think that's when it can become a little bit shifty. And one of the things I want to kind of ask you guys about too is, what are the red flags, right? I mean, because sometimes as a parent, you might be too close to it, but, you know, Reggie, in your experience as a coach, coaching kids, exposure to a number of different kids to your programs, what are some of the red flags that will show up that when that parent and that athlete relationship is dysfunctional? It's not, what are some of the signs that you've seen over the years where, hey, you know, this is not working, and what can you do about it? I mean, you're not the parent, but you know, how can you help navigate that in support of the kid?
Well, red flag, man, it's pretty obvious, right? I mean, it's the yelling, the screaming, it's it's a tension in the air that's almost like that cloud that covered the kid in the Charlie Brown character.
Oh yeah,
Everywhere he
yeah,
goes,
yeah.
he's just there.
Right.
You see it, right?
Linus or whatever his name is.
Fine, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's exactly what Chris was saying, because what Chris said about how we can emotionally damage a kid with negativity. It takes you back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The need to be loved, the need to belong, etc. And as a parent, or excuse me, as a kid, you always want to please your parents, right? You're going to do whatever you can to please your parents. And if you keep coming down on them, telling them that they're not doing enough, eventually you're going to beat them down, right? So, but again, as a coach that's been entrusted with that relationship, I think it's important that you see it and you address the red flags when you see it. I know for a fact that I was coaching a youth team, and the dad just came down. In this particular case, it was a girls' team, right? And the dad was just always on the daughter, and I challenged him about the situation, and I told him what he was doing, and I addressed it, and he and I had a very icy, dicey relationship after that, but I addressed it. But at the end of the day, it still didn't change the behavior, right?
Mhm.
It may have mitigated it some. He may have tempered it down, but again, the eye contact after a bucket or a mistake, more like a turnover or a
Mhm.
bad shot or bad situation, she would look at him on the sideline instead of looking at me on the bench, or just going on to the next play. That's really what you want to do, is go on to the next play. Don't look at me, don't look at your dad, just go on to the next play, right? Forget about it. But those are red flags.
Mhm.
So you can see red flags on the court, off the court. You just got to be aware of them and address them when they do come up. That's part
Yeah.
of
That's.
leadership.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Guyton, you have anything else to add on that?
No, no.
Okay. No. Well said. There's one thing that I'll ask you both, right, as we get closer to the end here, is you know you both seen a lot over the years in the different programs and kids and parents that you work with. What do you know about the hoop journey, right, for a kid that you wish parents understood? This is kind of the moment to kind of help the parents see around the corner, right? What are some things that you say to yourself, man, I wish that if parents could understand a couple things. Here's what I hope they would understand about this hoop journey that I've learned over the years. Chris, I'll start with you.
What I'd like parents to know about this hoop journey that I've learned is that words matter,
Mm-hmm.
and words can hurt, but words can also inspire. And that as a parent, you need to choose your words wisely, not only to your kid, but to the coaches your kids are working with, to the officials, to maybe the person who's running the program. And I think that kids see when you are out of pocket as a parent, and that's behavior that they're either going to emulate because they think it's great, or they're going to emulate because they don't know any better. So first grade, third grade, fifth grade, we should not be screaming at kids in kindergarten, shoot the ball. I get the emotional excitement. They can't even dribble. They're running up and down the court, not even dribbling the ball. I understand it's human nature, but words we say to people involved with our children's development matters. And I would encourage parents to just think before they speak, something as simple as that. Think before you speak. Maybe not now, maybe later.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we got to be better at just choosing our moments and what we say to the people or to our children, and make sure that we're saying them for the right reasons.
How about yourself, Reggie?
That's a good question, Hamp. I would probably say to both the parent and to the kid, right? Enjoy the journey, right? Keep the destination in mind, but realize that the destination is not the end all. And I could speak to that because of the maturation that I've seen in the players that I coach and the young men and women that they become, and the bonds that were created along the process, particularly as it relates to the men's team or the boys team that I coached at the time, I mean, a lot of people that they competed against are in the league. And so those are great memories that they have, whether or not it's photos or conversations or whatever, about going up against a Kevin Durant, for example, or some other players that Kevin Love, that played in the league. Those are all memories that they need to embrace, right? And I think a lot of times parents tend to focus so much on that end goal. And granted, I get it. In some cases, some parents are paying a lot of money, right?
Right.
And so they want a return on their investment. So I get it. And then they may have had to make some sacrifices in order to make that trip available to their kid to go play in. But at the same time, just remember that they're creating lifelong memories that they will cherish. You want them to cherish it, right? You don't want them to be bad memories, right? And I think that, as Chris indicated and alluded to, is that if you don't choose your words carefully, and you're surrounding that experience with a level of negativity, that will be a scar that'll be with them a lifetime, as opposed to a positive memory for a lifetime.
No, that's well said, because, on the whole expectation piece, one of the things that, I'd make every parent aware of is that if your kid is talented enough to pursue a scholarship, right? Out of the thousands of players that play in this game, only 3% actually, receive a scholarship to play college ball. 1% is D1. So when you put that in perspective, it really should be about the journey, right? Because you're kind of a rare bird if you're talented enough to get to that level. And I can think about, my own individual journey. I was just talking to my coach from college, this is 100 years back, last week, or, a player that I played with was talking to him yesterday, and so you develop these relationships along the way that can last a lifetime. So that's an important piece of it. So thanks for sharing that. We're at the end here, fellas. So one of the things I want to give you both an opportunity to kind of leave some words of wisdom, since this is the title of this particular show, Wisdom to Parents of Young Athletes. What are your last words of wisdom for parents and athletes? And Chris, I'll start with you. The 3 to 4 nuggets that they could probably adopt right now, right? You don't have to wait. They could adopt it right now to help their child with their own individual hoop journey. And then Reggie, I'll come to you.
Okay.
My last words of wisdom to parents and athletes is to know what you don't know, and be open to going out and trying to find the best available help to find out what you don't know. And secondly, remember that no matter how much you think you know, when it comes to your kid and their journey and their process, you probably need to get someone else's opinion on it to make sure that you are making rational, lesser emotional decisions with your kid, because it's hard. It's hard. When my kid was in the 4th grade, I was hiding the game because he was doing whatever he's doing. And I had to literally, during the game, I remember this game. I was at the Be Ready Hoop going, why am I so into this? And I'm mellow, I'm chill. I'm not outwardly, but I'm inside, I'm just boiling up. Then I realize that day I'm like, I'm so fired up. That's 50% of me out there.
Right.
And if I was playing, I would do it this way. I would have locked that kid up. I would have done this. I would have done that. So once I realized that's my emotional attachment, because I helped birth that child 50%, that's why I care so much. However, I have a responsibility to managing myself, managing my emotions, carrying myself in a certain manner so that my son had a great experience. I was only out of pocket 2 times in his whole basketball career that I remember. One, I was really out of pocket. But and some days are just out of pocket every Saturday and Sunday. That's just their routine. Right. Not judging them. But my son knew that I loved him. He knew that I cared for him. As he got a little older, I learned that less is more. I didn't have to give him 10 things to work on before he got out of the car. I remember we were at Hillsborough High School for a summer league game. And I said, all right, I'm just going to narrow it down to 3. And then he got out of the car, and I said to myself, I know a lot about hoop. Did he hear anything I said? Does he care anything I said? Right. Probably not. So I narrowed it down to 1.
Right.
He didn't need the full scouting report coming from dad. He played for a good coach. He was old enough to know what he was doing. But we say it because we want to be a part of it. So I will leave parents with this. Just because you're talking and telling them what to do, they're probably not listening. So save yourself the energy. Put your arm around them. Tell them that you love them. Right. Tell them we're going to Sizzler if you play well, or we're going Dairy Queen if you don't. But there's going to be a reward after because you appreciate being out there to celebrate this experience with them. And that's going to give them confidence and help enhance their journey.
Right on, right on. Reggie?
It's hard to beat that, man. But I would say, parents, just be parents, man. Just be parents, right? And part of parenting is nurturing, right? And part of nurturing is encouraging and developing, right? So I would say, encourage them to pursue their dreams, and most importantly, whatever that is, wherever you're encouraging them to go, just make sure that they love what they're doing, right? And so again, we're talking about how can you identify someone special and talented and someone that loves the game, et cetera.
Right.
You want to nurture that, put them in that environment where they can be successful, and most importantly, not necessarily fall in love with the game because of the game, but fall in love with the game because of what the game can teach you. The game can teach you so many things about working with teams, how to handle failure, how to handle success. There's a direct correlation between hard work and the end results. I mean, there's so much to be learned by playing that game of basketball. That's one of the reasons why we do what we do. That's one of the reasons why we're talking about this podcast, because within our respective industries, we've all become leaders because of the leadership skills that we learned from that basketball court. So, just nurture them to take advantage of the lessons that are learned on and off the court. And again, just enjoy the process, enjoy the journey.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. This has been a blast. The first podcast that we've had today. I think hopefully some parents and some young athletes have be able to take some nuggets that they can begin to implement right now in their own hoop journey. Thank you very much. And I look forward to our next one that we have on Run It Back. Thank you.